The helicopter blades cut through the evening air as we ascended from Manhattan, the city lights shrinking beneath us. I sat rigid in my seat, trying to process what had just happened. Mark, the man I thought I loved, the father of my child, had tried to sell me to the Russian Mafia. The shock of his betrayal left me hollow, as if something vital had been carved out of me. Vito sat across from me, his dark eyes watching me with an intensity I couldn't decipher. Neither of us had spoken since leaving the scene of Mark's capture. What was there to say? The man who had orchestrated my kidnapping had just saved my life, while the man I had trusted with my heart had been willing to sacrifice me without hesitation. "Are you sure you're not injured?" Vito finally broke the silence, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I shook my head, one hand resting protectively over my stomach. "No, I'm fine." The words came out flat, emotionless. "The doctor will examine you when we return, just to be certain." His tone made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. I didn't argue. After everything that had happened, a medical check seemed trivial. Besides, I wanted reassurance that the baby was unharmed after the day's events. The lights of Vito's estate came into view, the helipad glowing like a beacon in the darkness. I felt a strange sense of relief as we descended. 5 days ago, this place had been my prison. Now, it felt like sanctuary. Elena was waiting when we disembarked, her silver-streaked hair gleaming in the helicopter's lights. She didn't speak, just assessed me with those clinical eyes, before nodding once to Vito. "The doctor is waiting in the East Wing," she informed him. "I've prepared a light meal to be served afterward." Vito placed his hand at the small of my back, guiding me toward the mansion. The gesture was possessive yet protective. I should have resented it, but found myself leaning into his solid presence instead. The doctor was a petite woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. "Dr. Parrish," she introduced herself, as she checked my vitals and examined the bruises forming where Mark had gripped my arm. "The baby?" I asked, unable to keep the anxiety from my voice. She smiled reassuringly. "Everything looks normal. Your blood pressure is slightly elevated, but that's to be expected given the circumstances. I'd like to do an ultrasound, just to be certain." I nodded, watching as she prepared the equipment. Vito had excused himself during the examination, but now he appeared in the doorway, his expression questioning. "May I?" he asked, surprising me with his deference. I hesitated, then nodded. This felt intensely private. Yet after today, the boundaries between us had shifted in ways I couldn't quite define. The grainy image appeared on the screen, that familiar bean shape now more defined than in my previous scan. The rapid flutter of the heartbeat filled the room, strong and insistent. Alive. Safe. Something unexpected happened then. Vito's expression softened, the hardness in his eyes giving way to something that looked almost like wonder. For a moment, I glimpsed the man beneath the criminal facade. Someone capable of being moved by the miracle of new life. "Everything looks perfect, Dr. Daest," Parrish announced, breaking the spell. 8 weeks and 4 days, consistent with your previous dating. Strong heartbeat, normal development. Relief washed over me, leaving me lightheaded. The baby was okay. Whatever else happened, my child was safe. After the doctor left, Elena showed me to my room, not the same one I'd occupied during my captivity, but a larger suite in what she called the family wing. The significance wasn't lost on me. "Mr. Castellano thought you might prefer these accommodations," she explained, opening the door to reveal a spacious suite, decorated in soothing blues and creams. "They're more comfortable for long-term stays." Long-term. The words hung in the air between us, a question neither of us could answer yet. "Thank you, Elena," I said simply. She nodded, some of her usual stiffness melting. "There are clothes in the closet. Dinner will be served in an hour, if you feel up to joining Mr. Castellano. Otherwise, I can have a tray brought up." The thought of being alone with my turbulent thoughts was suddenly unbearable. "I'll come down," I decided. After Elena left, I explored the suite. Unlike my previous room, this one felt less like a guest chamber and more like someone's personal space. The sitting area featured comfortable furniture arranged around a fireplace. A writing desk stood near the window overlooking the gardens. The bedroom held a massive four-poster bed draped in luxurious linens. The bathroom was a marvel of marble and glass, with a deep soaking tub and a shower large enough for 3 people, but it was the second, smaller room adjoining the bedroom that stopped me in my tracks. It was empty save for a rocking chair near the window, but the soft yellow walls and the view of the garden made its intended purpose clear: a nursery. The realization brought unexpected tears. Veto Castellano, the dangerous crime boss who had orchestrated my abduction, was offering my child a home. I showered and dressed in a simple navy dress I found in the closet, once again unnerved by how perfectly everything fit. My reflection in the mirror startled me. I looked different somehow, older, perhaps, or simply changed by the day's revelations. The diamond pendant still hung at my throat, a reminder of how quickly life could transform. Vito was waiting in the dining room, a smaller, more intimate space than I would have expected in such a grand house. The table was set for 2, candles casting warm light over fine china and crystal. "You look rested," he observed as I took my seat. "Appearances can be deceiving," I replied. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Indeed, dinner was served by silent, efficient staff. Wild mushroom risotto, roasted vegetables, crusty bread still warm from the oven. I ate mechanically at first, then with increasing appetite as I realized how hungry I was. "The doctor assures me you and the child are well," Veto said after a comfortable silence. I nodded. "Yes. Thank you for arranging that. It was the least I could do after putting you through such an ordeal." I set down my fork, meeting his gaze directly. "What happens to Mark?" Something cold flickered in Veto's eyes. "He's being held securely while we extract the information we need. And after that?" Vito sipped his wine, considering his words carefully. "That depends partially on you." I frowned. "On me? Why?" "He's the father of your child," Vito said simply. "That grants him a certain consideration he wouldn't otherwise receive." The implication was clear. Vito was offering me input into Mark's fate. A strange mercy I hadn't expected. "I don't want to know the details," I said finally. "But I don't want my child to grow up knowing their father was executed either." Vito nodded, his expression unreadable. "A reasonable request." We finished dinner in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. As the staff cleared the dishes, Vito stood and offered me his hand. "Would you walk with me? There are things we should discuss." I accepted his hand, allowing him to lead me through the French doors onto a terrace overlooking the illuminated gardens. The night air was cool, but not uncomfortable, carrying the scent of late roses and the river beyond. "You said earlier that I could return to my life," I began, breaking the silence. "Did you mean that?" Vito leaned against the stone balustrade, his profile sharp against the night sky. "I meant what I said. The immediate threat has been neutralized. Mark will give us what we need to eliminate any remaining Russian interest in you. You could return to your apartment, your job, your former life, but you don't think I should," I guessed. His dark eyes met mine. "It's not my place to tell you what you should do, Eliza. I can only offer alternatives, such as..." "Stay here," he said simply. "Not as a prisoner or a guest, but as someone under my protection. You and your child would want for nothing. Safety, education, opportunities, all would be provided." "In exchange for what?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Vito straightened, his expression serious. "Nothing you're not willing to give." I turned away, looking out over the manicured gardens with their hidden security personnel. "And if I choose to leave, then I'll ensure you have the resources to establish a new life elsewhere. A comfortable home, financial security, a trust for the child. My protection would extend to you wherever you choose to go." His offer was generous, too generous. "Why?" I asked, turning back to face him. "Why would you do this for me? For my child?" Something flickered in his eyes, an emotion I couldn't quite identify. "Perhaps I see something of myself in your situation. I, too, once had to choose between the life I knew and an uncertain future under a powerful man's protection. I hadn't expected this glimpse into his past." "What did you choose?" "I chose security," he said simply, "and built my own power from that foundation." We stood in silence for a moment, the weight of his offer hanging between us. "I need time," I said finally. To think, to process everything that's happened. Vito nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. Nothing has to be decided tonight. As we walked back toward the house, his hand rested lightly at the small of my back, a gesture I was becoming accustomed to, perhaps too quickly. At the entrance to my suite, he paused. Rest well, Eliza. Tomorrow is another day. I watched him walk away, his confident stride carrying him down the corridor until he disappeared around a corner. Closing the door behind me, I moved to the window. Looking out at the moon-silvered landscape of Vito's estate, my hand drifted to my stomach, to the tiny life growing there. Blissfully unaware of the complicated world it would be born into. What should we do? I whispered to my unborn child. Which path leads to safety? To happiness? The baby, of course, offered no answer. That decision was mine alone to make. I crawled into the massive bed, exhaustion finally overtaking me. As I drifted toward sleep, I realized something unsettling. For the first time since learning of my pregnancy, I had thought we instead of I. Somehow, in the space of a few chaotic days, my future had become inexorably linked with Vito Castellanos, for better or worse. Morning came with soft light filtering through gauzy curtains. For a moment, I lay disoriented, struggling to place the unfamiliar ceiling above me. Then reality crashed back. The cafe, Mark's betrayal, Vito's offer. I placed a protective hand over my stomach, now a habitual gesture. Good morning to you, I whispered. We survived our first week together. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Elena entered, carrying a breakfast tray. Her usually severe expression had softened marginally since yesterday. Mr. Castellano hoped you might join him for breakfast on the East Terrace, she said, setting the tray down. But he thought you might appreciate tea first. The consideration surprised me. Thank him for me. I'll be down shortly. After she left, I sipped the ginger tea, perfect for morning sickness, and moved to the closet. Today, I selected loose-fitting trousers and a cashmere sweater, clothing far more luxurious than anything I'd ever owned. The East Terrace overlooked a Japanese garden, meticulously designed with stone pathways winding between manicured shrubs and a small koi pond. Vito sat at a table laden with breakfast foods, reading something on a tablet. He rose when he saw me, that old-world courtesy still surprising. Eliza, you look rested. I slept well, I admitted, taking the seat he offered. The room is comfortable. I'm glad to hear it. He poured coffee for himself, offering me herbal tea. How are you feeling this morning? The question seemed genuine, not merely polite. Better. Still processing. He nodded, understanding in his dark eyes. Of course. These adjustments take time. We ate in companionable silence for a while. The autumn sun warming the terrace. Birds flitted between ornamental trees, their songs creating a peaceful soundtrack. I have some news about Mark, Vito said finally. He's been cooperative. The flash drive has been recovered, along with most of the money. I set down my fork, appetite suddenly diminished. What happens to him now? He'll be transported to a property I own in Vermont. Rural, isolated, but comfortable. He'll remain there until the child is born, after which certain arrangements will be made for his future. Prison? I guessed. A faint smile touched Vito's lips. Of a kind. He'll have a new identity, limited resources, and will be relocated to a small town in South America where my associates can monitor him. He'll be alive, as you requested, but never in a position to harm you or your child again. It was a mercy of sorts, more than Mark deserved after what he'd done. Thank you. There's something else, Vito continued, his expression becoming serious. Your apartment in Queens was searched thoroughly by the Russians before my men intercepted them. It's not in good condition. My stomach tightened. My things. Salvageable items have been collected and will be brought here today. Unfortunately, much was damaged beyond repair. The news should have devastated me, but I felt strangely detached. The apartment had never been much of a home, just a place to sleep between workdays. What about my job? I've taken the liberty of having Giovanni deliver a letter of resignation on your behalf. Your final paycheck and unused vacation time will be deposited directly into your account. I bristled at the presumption. You had no right? It was a practical matter, Vito interrupted gently. The Russians know where you work. It isn't safe for you to return, regardless of your ultimate decision about your future. The logic was sound, but his unilateral action stung. You should have consulted me. He inclined his head in acknowledgement. You're right. I apologize for overstepping. His apology surprised me. I'd expected justification, not contrition. In the future, please include me in decisions about my life. I will, he promised. Speaking of which, there's something I'd like to show you after breakfast. Something that might help with your decision. Curiosity piqued. I agreed. After finishing our meal, Vito led me through the mansion to a wing I hadn't explored before. The architecture here was newer, the decor more modern than the rest of the house. This is my private office, he explained, gesturing to a large room dominated by floor-to-ceiling windows and sleek furniture. One wall held multiple screens displaying news feeds, market data, and what appeared to be security camera footage from various locations. You're showing me your command center? I asked skeptically. In a manner of speaking. He moved to a concealed panel in the wall, pressing his palm against it. A hidden door slid open, revealing an elevator. What I want to show you is below. Wariness crept up my spine. Below? My legitimate business interests, he clarified, seeing my expression. The foundation of my empire. The elevator descended silently, opening onto a corridor lined with glass-walled offices. People in business attire moved purposefully between spaces, carrying tablets and engaged in conversations that looked entirely ordinary and professional. Welcome to Castellano Enterprises, Vito said, guiding me forward, the legal face of my operations. As we walked, he explained the various divisions: property development, venture capital, technology investments, art acquisition. Employees nodded respectfully as we passed, but no one seemed surprised to see me accompanying Vito. They know who I am, I realized aloud. They know you're under my protection, he corrected. Details aren't necessary. We paused at a glass-enclosed conference room where a diverse group of people were engaged in an animated discussion around a table covered with architectural models. This is our charitable foundation, Vito explained, currently planning a community center in the Bronx. Healthcare, childcare, educational resources for low-income families. I studied him, trying to reconcile this philanthropic side with the man who had orchestrated my abduction. Why show me this? He led me to a quieter area, a small sitting room overlooking an indoor garden, because I want you to understand that what I offer you and your child isn't just protection, Eliza. It's legitimacy, a foot in both worlds. Both the criminal and the legal, I clarified. Both are part of my reality, he acknowledged without defensiveness. The foundation of my power was built through means you might find objectionable, but its purpose has evolved. What I've built now serves something greater than myself. Your family, I guessed, remembering the photographs in his study. What remains of it, he agreed, shadows crossing his face. And perhaps, if you choose, yours as well. The implication hung between us, neither fully articulated nor denied. I need to make a call, I said suddenly. To my friend Jenna. She must be worried sick about me. Of course, Vito agreed readily. You can use the secure line in my office. Complete privacy. His immediate accommodation of my request surprised me. I'd expected resistance, monitoring, control. Instead, he was offering trust. Back in his office, he showed me to the phone. I'll leave you. Take as much time as you need. At the door, he paused. Eliza, I hope you understand. I'm not attempting to coerce you into a decision. Whatever you choose, my offer of protection stands. After he left, I dialed Jenna's number with trembling fingers. She answered on the second ring. Hello? Her voice, so familiar, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Jen, it's me. Eliza? Oh my God, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for days. Your apartment's trashed. You're not answering your phone. Your neighbor said men in suits took you away. I was about to file a missing person report. The concern in her voice was genuine, reminding me that despite everything that had happened, I still had connections to my old life. I'm safe, I assured her. It's complicated. Remember that ultrasound I was going to send you? I accidentally sent it to someone else, and things spiraled from there. I gave her an abbreviated version of events, omitting the more frightening details while conveying the essence. Mark's betrayal, the danger I'd been in, the protection I'd been offered. "Wait," she interrupted. "You're staying with some rich guy who's offering to take care of you and the baby? Who is this man?" "His name is Vito Castellano." A pause. "The Vito Castellano, the billionaire developer?" Her response startled me. "You know who he is?" "Eliza, everyone in real estate knows who he is. His company restored that historic theater in Brooklyn last year. There was a huge spread in Architectural Digest. He's seriously connected. Old money mixed with new ventures." I struggled to reconcile Jenna's description with the man I knew, the criminal boss who spoke casually of eliminating threats, who had orchestrated my abduction without hesitation. "What should I do, Jen?" I asked, my voice small. "Do you feel safe with him?" she asked after a moment. "Strangely, yes," I admitted. "Safer than I've felt in a long time." "Then maybe give it some time," she suggested. "Figure out what you want, what's best for the baby. Just be careful, okay? Men like that are used to getting what they want." After promising to stay in touch, I hung up, my mind churning with new perspectives. Jenna's recognition of Vito as a legitimate businessman rather than a criminal figure complicated my understanding of him. I found him waiting in the Japanese garden, standing beside the koi pond. The morning sunlight caught the silver at his temples, softening his usually severe appearance. "Did you reach your friend?" he asked as I approached. "Yes, thank you." I paused, studying him. "She knows who you are. She called you a billionaire developer." Something like amusement flickered in his eyes. "The public face of Castellano Enterprises is quite respectable." "And the private face does what is necessary to protect what's been built." He met my gaze directly. "I've never pretended to be a saint, Eliza. But neither am I the devil you might imagine." The complexity of the man before me was becoming clearer. Neither purely evil nor good, but operating by a code I was only beginning to understand. "I'd like to see more of the grounds," I said, changing the subject. "If that's permitted." "Of course. Would you like company, or would you prefer to explore alone?" The offer of solitude surprised me. Another small freedom I hadn't expected. "Alone, I think. For now." He nodded. "The entire estate is secure. Feel free to go wherever you like. Elena can provide you with a map if you wish." As I turned to leave, he called after me softly. "Eliza?" I looked back. "Take all the time you need. Some choices shouldn't be rushed." The estate grounds were more extensive than I'd realized. Armed with a map from Elena and comfortable walking shoes, I set out to explore. The crisp autumn air filled my lungs, a welcome change from the mansion's carefully controlled atmosphere. Beyond the manicured gardens near the house, the property transitioned to more natural landscapes, wooded areas with walking paths, meadows where wildflowers still bloomed despite the season, and finally, a bluff overlooking the Hudson River. I stood there for a long time, watching the water flow past, carrying boats and barges toward the distant city. The vastness of the property reinforced what I was coming to understand about Vito Castellano. His power extended far beyond what I'd initially comprehended. This wasn't merely the home of a criminal boss. It was the domain of someone whose influence spanned worlds both legitimate and otherwise. My wandering eventually led me to a small stone building nestled among old-growth trees. Curiosity drew me closer. Inside, I found a pristine home gym with state-of-the-art equipment, a yoga studio, and what appeared to be a martial arts training space. "Ms. Reynolds." The voice startled me. I turned to find a compact man with close-cropped gray hair watching me from the doorway. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize anyone was here." I apologized. "No apology necessary. Mr. Castellano informed the staff you have full access to the grounds." His accent was faintly Eastern European, his posture military straight. "I'm Alexei, head of security, and, if you're interested, martial arts instructor." "You teach?" I asked, gesturing to the training space. He nodded. "Mr. Castellano believes everyone in his household should be capable of self-defense, including guests." The offer was implicit. "I don't have any experience," I admitted. "All the more reason to learn," he responded matter-of-factly, "especially in your condition." My hand moved instinctively to my stomach. "You know?" Security is my responsibility, Ms. Reynolds. Your safety and the safety of your child are primary concerns. His expression softened slightly. My wife trained until her 7th month with both our children. Nothing strenuous, just fundamentals. It gave her confidence. The idea appealed to me, not just for the physical benefits, but for the sense of control it might offer. After being kidnapped, after Mark's betrayal, the thought of being able to protect myself held undeniable allure. When could we start? I asked. Tomorrow morning, if you wish. 9 o'clock? I agreed, thanking him before continuing my exploration. The conversation left me with a curious feeling. Once again, Vado had anticipated my needs before I recognized them myself. The training facility, Alexei's availability, these weren't coincidences. They were part of a carefully orchestrated environment designed to make me feel secure, capable, independent, within the boundaries of his protection. The manipulation should have angered me. Instead, I found myself grudgingly impressed by the thoroughness of his consideration. By late afternoon, I'd circled back to the main house, where Elena informed me that the salvaged items from my apartment had arrived. They were arranged in one of the smaller sitting rooms for my review. The sight was simultaneously heartbreaking and illuminating. My life in Queens had been reduced to a few cardboard boxes, clothes, some books, photographs, a small jewelry box containing my mother's pearl earrings, the only inheritance she'd left me. My laptop, miraculously unharmed. A box of papers including my birth certificate and passport. So little to show for 28 years of existence. Is this everything? I asked Giovanni, who was overseeing the delivery. Everything salvageable, he confirmed, his expression sympathetic. The Russians were thorough in their search, I nodded, running my fingers over a framed photograph of Jenna and me at college graduation. Thank you for retrieving what you could. Mr. Castellano would like to know if there's anything specific that wasn't recovered. He's prepared to replace what was lost. The offer was generous, but somehow hollow. How does one replace a life? No, I said quietly. Nothing that matters. As I sorted through the remnants of my former existence, a strange calm settled over me. Perhaps it was the hormones of pregnancy, or the shock of recent events, but I felt myself detaching from the person I'd been before, Eliza Reynolds, administrative assistant, Mark Tanner's girlfriend, a woman living paycheck to paycheck in a cramped Queens apartment. That woman seemed increasingly distant, a character in someone else's story. Dinner that evening was served in the smaller dining room, the setting intimate despite the formality of fine china and crystal. Vito joined me, dressed casually in a light sweater and dark trousers that somehow looked as elegant as his suits. I understand your belongings arrived today, he said, as we were served a delicate seafood pasta. Was anything important missing? Just things, I replied. Nothing irreplaceable. He studied me over his wine glass. You seem at peace with that. I'm surprised myself, I admitted. Maybe it's easier to let go when you've already lost so much. His expression softened. Or perhaps you're stronger than you realize. We ate in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the clink of silverware and the muted footsteps of the staff. It struck me how quickly I'd grown accustomed to this luxury, how easily I'd adapted to Vito's world. I met Alexei today, I said, breaking the silence. He offered to teach me self-defense. Vito nodded. He mentioned your conversation. Do you plan to accept his offer? I already have. We start tomorrow morning. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. Good. Knowledge is power, Eliza, and few forms of knowledge are more empowering than knowing how to protect yourself. Is that why you had him approach me? I asked directly. To empower me? He didn't deny the orchestration. I instructed my staff to make their skills available to you. The choice to accept was yours alone. Like the choice to stay or leave, I challenged. His gaze was steady. Precisely. After dinner, he invited me to join him in the library, a magnificent 2-story room lined with leather-bound volumes and featuring a fireplace large enough to stand in. The staff had lit a fire against the evening chill, and comfortable leather chairs were arranged before it. Vado poured himself a small measure of cognac, offering me sparkling water with lemon. We sat in the warm glow of the fire, the atmosphere conducive to confidences. "You've been here nearly a week now," he observed. "Are you any closer to a decision about your future?" The question hung between us, weighted with implications. "I'm not sure there's really a choice to make," I said finally. "My apartment is destroyed, my job resigned from. The Russians know who I am, where I worked. My old life is effectively gone." "That doesn't mean you must remain here," he pointed out. "As I promised, I can arrange a new identity, a new home anywhere you'd like to go. Financial security for you and your child." I studied him in the firelight, trying to understand his motivations. "Why would you do that? What do you gain from my leaving?" A smile touched his lips. "Perhaps nothing. Perhaps peace of mind knowing you made your choice freely. And if I choose to stay?" His expression grew serious. "Then we would need to discuss terms." "Terms," I repeated. "What exactly are you offering, Veto? And what do you expect in return?" He set aside his glass, leaning forward slightly. "I'm offering protection, security, and a place in my organization if you want it. Your intelligence and adaptability would be assets in the legitimate side of my business. I'm offering education for your child, the finest available. A home here, or elsewhere if you prefer, though security would be simpler to maintain on the estate." "And in return?" I pressed. "Loyalty," he said simply. "Discretion regarding certain aspects of my operations. And perhaps, in time, companionship." The last word hung in the air between us, its meaning deliberately ambiguous. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, not entirely from the fire. "I'm pregnant with another man's child," I reminded him. "A man who betrayed us both," he countered. "The child is innocent of its father's crimes. I would never hold that against an infant." His response surprised me with its compassion. "You'd accept another man's child?" Something flickered in his eyes, a shadow of old pain. "Family is not always defined by blood, Eliza. Sometimes it's defined by choice." The weight of his words settled around me. He wasn't offering merely protection or employment. He was offering a place in his family, a concept I knew meant everything to him. "I need to think," I said, rising abruptly. "This is a lot to process." He stood as well, maintaining a respectful distance. "Of course, take all the time you need." I paused at the library door. "Thank you for being honest about your expectations. Always," he promised. "Whatever exists between us will be built on truth, not deception." Back in my suite, I stood before the window, looking out at the moonlit grounds. The contrast between my old life and this new potential reality couldn't have been starker. A week ago, I was an administrative assistant, struggling to make rent, pregnant, and abandoned. Now I was being offered a life of luxury, security, and power, by a man whose world operated by rules I was only beginning to understand. What kind of mother would I be if I accepted? What kind of person would I become in Vito Castellano's orbit? And yet, what kind of future could I provide for my child alone, constantly looking over my shoulder for threats from Mark's past? I placed both hands on my still flat stomach. "What should we do, little one?" I whispered. "Which path leads to happiness, to safety, to a life you deserve?" As if in answer, my phone chimed with a text message. Jenna checking in after our conversation earlier. "Just making sure you're okay. Love you. Whatever you decide, I'm here for you. XO." The message brought unexpected tears. A reminder that regardless of what I decided, I wasn't entirely alone in the world. I had at least one connection to my past life, one person who cared about my well-being without ulterior motives. Perhaps that was what ultimately tipped the balance. The knowledge that I could choose Vito's world without completely severing ties to my own, that I could accept his offer without losing myself entirely. That night, I slept more soundly than I had since discovering my pregnancy. When morning came, I dressed in workout clothes and made my way to the training facility where Alexei waited. The first step, I realized, toward claiming whatever new life I was building, not as a victim of circumstances, but as someone making deliberate choices for herself and her child. And if those choices led me deeper into Vito Castellano's world, that too would be my decision to make. 2 months passed in a rhythm I never could have imagined before. Each morning began with training with Alexei. Simple exercises designed to improve balance and strength, modified as my pregnancy progressed. My body was changing, a small but definite curve now visible beneath my clothes. At 12 weeks, I'd graduated from morning sickness to a ravenous appetite that amused the kitchen staff. Autumn deepened around the estate, the trees blazing with color, before surrendering to November's chill. I'd watch the transformation from various windows of the mansion and during my daily walks around the grounds. The gardens had been put to bed for winter, the outdoor furniture covered or stored away, but I found the stark landscape held its own beauty. I still hadn't given Vito a definitive answer about my future, and he hadn't pressed for one. Instead, he'd simply incorporated me into his daily life, as if my presence was the most natural thing in the world. We shared meals, discussed books from his extensive library, and occasionally watched films in the media room. He included me in conversations about his legitimate business ventures, valuing my opinions in a way Mark never had. It was during one such conversation that I realized how much my perspective had shifted. The community center plans need revision, Vito was saying as we sat in his office reviewing architectural drawings. The childcare facility is too small for the neighborhood's needs. I studied the blueprints, mentally calculating square footage and potential occupancy. If you expand eastward instead of northward, you could increase capacity without sacrificing the playground space. He considered this, dark eyes thoughtful. That would require purchasing the adjacent lot, which you already own through your shell company, I pointed out, having reviewed the property portfolios the previous week. It's currently leased to a storage facility, but the contract expires in January. A smile touched his lips. You've been paying attention. I'm a quick study. His expression grew serious. Yes, you are. Which is why I'd like you to consider taking a more formal role in the foundation. We need someone with your analytical skills and compassion to oversee the community outreach programs. The offer startled me. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a purpose, he corrected. One that would allow you to make a difference while providing for your child's future. I couldn't deny the appeal of his proposal. The foundation's work was genuinely beneficial, providing resources to underserved communities, creating educational opportunities, funding healthcare initiatives. That it was financed by money from Vito's less legitimate enterprises was a moral complexity I was learning to navigate. I'd need to finish my degree, I said finally. I'd been 3 credits short of completing my business administration degree when financial necessity had forced me to take the administrative job at the law firm. Easily arranged, he replied. Online courses, or private instruction if you prefer. That evening, as I prepared for bed, I found myself standing before the mirror in my bathroom, studying my changing body. My hands cradled the small swell of my abdomen, marveling at how something so tiny could catalyze such monumental changes in my life. Your timing is impeccable, little one, I murmured. You've turned everything upside down. But maybe that's exactly what needed to happen. A soft knock at my door interrupted my reflections. Elena stood there, her usual severe expression softened by what might have been concern. Mr. Castellano asked me to deliver this, she said, handing me a small gift box tied with a simple ribbon. He apologizes for the late hour, but thought you might want it before tomorrow's appointment. Tomorrow was my first formal prenatal visit with the obstetrician Vito had arranged. A discreet doctor with impeccable credentials who made house calls to the estate, the 12-week milestone. I thanked Elena, curious about the unexpected gift. Alone again, I opened the box to find a delicate gold chain with a small pendant. Not diamonds this time, but a simple protective charm. The note inside read simply, "For luck tomorrow. No tracking devices this time, I promise. V." The self-deprecating humor made me smile. It was a side of Vito few people ever saw. This capacity for gentleness, for acknowledging his own heavy-handed methods with a touch of wry awareness. I fastened the necklace around my throat, the pendant resting just above my heart. A talisman for tomorrow's milestone, yes, but also something more. A tangible symbol of how far we'd come from those first tense days of captivity and suspicion. The doctor's visit the next morning confirmed what I'd already sensed. The baby was developing perfectly, 12 weeks and 3 days, right on schedule. I watched the ultrasound screen in wonder as the tiny form moved with surprising energy, No longer a bean-shaped cluster of cells, but recognizably human, with distinct limbs and a profile I strained to memorize. "Would you like to know the sex, Dr. Bo?" Abrams asked, her experienced eyes reading something in the grainy image that I couldn't discern. I hesitated, suddenly wishing Vito was present, rather than respectfully waiting in his study. This felt like a decision we should make together, a thought that startled me with its implications. Not yet, I decided. Maybe at the next visit. After the doctor left, I found Vito in the library, pretending to read, though I suspected he'd been waiting for news. The careful neutrality of his expression couldn't quite mask his concern. "Everything's perfect," I announced from the doorway. "Exactly the right size, strong heartbeat, all the proper parts in all the proper places." Relief washed over his features, followed quickly by genuine pleasure. "That's wonderful news, Eliza." I crossed to where he sat, impulsively handing him the ultrasound images. "See for yourself." He studied the photos with an intensity that moved me, his finger tracing the outline of the tiny profile. "Remarkable," he murmured. Perfect indeed. Something shifted between us in that moment. Some last barrier dissolving. I found myself perching on the arm of his chair, our shoulders touching as we looked at the images together. "Dr. Abrams offered to tell me if it's a boy or a girl," I said. I decided to wait. "A wise choice," he agreed. "Some surprises are worth preserving." We sat in companionable silence for a moment, the fire crackling in the hearth, the weight of unspoken emotions filling the space between us. "I've been thinking about your offer," I said finally. "The position with the foundation." He looked up, careful hope in his eyes. "And I'd like to accept, with a few conditions. Name them. I want to finish my degree first, as we discussed, and I want my role to be substantive, not ceremonial. Real responsibility, real authority to make decisions." He nodded, unsurprised by my terms. "Anything else?" I took a deep breath, reaching the crux of what I'd been contemplating for weeks. "I want to stay here, at the estate. It's safe for the baby, and I've come to think of it as home." Something softened in his expression. "I'm glad to hear that. But," I continued, "I want my own space too, not just a suite in your house, but somewhere on the property that's truly mine. Somewhere I can raise my child with some degree of independence while still under your protection." He considered this request. "There's a guest house near the eastern woods. 3 bedrooms, its own gardens, private but secure. It would need some renovation to make it suitable for a child, but that could be arranged before the baby arrives." The solution was so immediate, so perfect, that I suspected he'd been considering the same possibility. "That sounds ideal. Consider it yours," he said simply. Then, with careful neutrality, "And what about us, Eliza? What role do you envision for me in this arrangement?" The question I'd been circling for weeks, approaching and retreating from an equal measure. What exactly was developing between us? Affection, certainly, mutual respect, perhaps even attraction, but complicated by the power dynamics that had defined our relationship from the beginning. "I don't know yet," I admitted honestly. "I care for you, Vito, more than I expected to, more than might be wise given everything that's happened. But I'm still healing from Mark's betrayal, still adjusting to the idea of motherhood, still finding my footing in your world." He nodded, no disappointment visible in his expression. "Then we proceed as we have been, one day at a time, with no pressure, no expectations beyond what develops naturally between us." The maturity of his response confirmed what I was coming to understand about Vito Castellano. Whatever his methods in business, however ruthless he might be with enemies, with me, he had consistently demonstrated patience, respect, and a willingness to wait for what he wanted rather than demand it. That evening, we celebrated the good news from the doctor's visit with a special dinner in the formal dining room, attended by Elena, Giovanni, Alexei, and a few other key members of the household staff who had become something like friends over the past months. Vito raised his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings, and to family, both those we are born to, and those we choose." The words resonated deeply as I sipped my sparkling water. Family. The concept had always been complicated for me, with parents who had withdrawn their support when I defied their plans for my life. Now I was creating my own definition of family, one that included my unborn child, certainly, but also this unlikely collection of people who had become my support system. Later, as the gathering dispersed, Vito walked me back to my suite. At my door, he hesitated. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you," he said. "Tomorrow is Thanksgiving. Normally, I host a small dinner for those who have nowhere else to go. Elena, Giovanni, others who consider this place their home. I'd be honored if you would join us." The invitation touched me deeply. "I'd like that very much," he smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious features. "Good. That's good." He lifted my hand, pressing a gentle kiss to my knuckles, a courtly gesture that sent unexpected warmth through me. "Sleep well, Eliza." As he walked away, I found myself watching his retreating figure, my emotions a complex tangle I wasn't yet ready to unravel. But one thing was becoming increasingly clear. Whatever future I was building here, Vito Castellano was becoming an essential part of it, not as my protector or benefactor, but as something far more personal, far more profound. And for the first time since learning of my pregnancy, the future didn't terrify me. Instead, it beckoned with unexpected promise. Spring arrived at the Castellano estate with a riot of color. The gardens awakened from their winter sleep, crocuses and daffodils pushing through the soil like nature's promise of new beginnings. I watched the transformation from the windows of the guest house, my home for the past 3 months. True to his word, Vito had renovated the charming 3-bedroom cottage near the eastern woods. The result was a perfect blend of comfort and security: warm wood floors, large windows overlooking private gardens, a nursery painted in gentle sea greens and furnished with everything a baby might need. My space, as I'd requested, but still within the protective boundaries of the estate. At 26 weeks pregnant, I'd settled into a routine that would have been unimaginable to me 6 months ago. Mornings were spent with modified training sessions with Alexei, followed by prenatal yoga. Afternoons, I worked remotely on completing my business degree, occasionally joining Vito in his office to discuss foundation projects. Evenings, we typically dined together, sometimes with others from the household, sometimes just the two of us. Our relationship had evolved naturally as he'd promised. The power imbalance that had defined our early interactions had gradually shifted as I found my place in his world, not as a captive or a guest, but as a partner of sorts. I'd come to understand him better, his complexities, his contradictions, the dual nature of his empire. And somewhere along the way, I'd fallen in love with him. The realization hadn't come as a dramatic epiphany, but rather as a quiet certainty that had grown stronger with each passing day. It was there in the way my pulse quickened when he entered a room, in the comfort I found in his presence, in the deep conversations that often lasted into the night. Yet neither of us had acted on these feelings. Vito maintained a respectful distance, never presuming, never pushing. Even when his gaze lingered on me with unmistakable longing, he held back, allowing me to set the pace of our relationship. Today marked a milestone in my pregnancy, the official start of my 3rd trimester. Dr. Abrams had confirmed at yesterday's appointment that everything was progressing perfectly. A healthy baby girl, active and developing right on schedule. A daughter. The knowledge still filled me with wonder. I was sitting in the sunroom of my cottage, going through foundation paperwork, when a knock at the door announced Elena's arrival. "Mr. Castellano requests your presence at the main house," she said. "He has something to show you." Curious, I followed her across the grounds, enjoying the warmth of the April sunshine on my face. The main house rose before us, its stone facade softened by climbing roses just beginning to leaf out. Vito was waiting in the entrance hall, dressed casually in a light sweater and dark trousers. His face brightened when he saw me. That private smile I'd come to treasure. "You're glowing," he said, taking my hands in his. "How are you feeling today?" "Like I'm carrying a future gymnast," I replied, placing one of his hands on my rounded abdomen where the baby was performing her daily acrobatics. She never stops moving. The wonder in his expression as he felt her movements still had the power to move me. This man who commanded an empire, whose name inspired fear in his enemies, rendered speechless by the flutter of tiny limbs. "I have something to show you," he said after a moment. "Something I think you'll appreciate." He led me through the house to the wing adjacent to his private quarters, an area that had been undergoing renovation for months. The construction noise had been a constant backdrop to winter, but I'd respected his privacy enough not to inquire about the project. "It's finished?" I asked, as we approached a set of double doors. He nodded, suddenly looking almost nervous. "As of this morning." He hesitated, then added, "What you'll see inside, it's an offer, not an expectation. You're under no obligation to accept." Intrigued by his uncharacteristic uncertainty, I waited as he opened the doors. My breath caught as I took in the space beyond. What had once been several separate rooms had been transformed into a magnificent apartment suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens and river beyond. The decor was elegant but warm, with comfortable furniture arranged to take advantage of both the views and the massive fireplace. "It's beautiful," I said, stepping inside, "but I don't understand." "There's more," he said, guiding me through to an adjoining room. It was a nursery, even more elaborate than the one in my cottage. The walls were hand-painted with a mural of an enchanted forest, complete with whimsical animals and fairy lights that could be illuminated at night. A rocking chair sat by the window, positioned to catch the morning light. Beyond that was a third room, a master bedroom with a 4-poster bed and adjoining bathroom that rivaled any luxury spa. The entire suite was self-contained yet connected to the main house. "I don't understand," I repeated, turning to face him. Vito took a deep breath. "This is my offer, Eliza. A place for you and your daughter here in the main house. Connected to my quarters, but with your own private space, your own entrance." He hesitated. "A family arrangement, if you will." The implication was clear. He was offering us a future together. Not just as benefactor and protege, but as a family unit. "What about the cottage?" I asked, my mind spinning. "It remains yours, exactly as you wanted it. This is simply an alternative. An option for the future, if and when you decide you want something more between us." His dark eyes held mine. "I told you once that I would never pressure you, never demand what you weren't ready to give freely. That hasn't changed." The care he'd put into creating this space, this possibility, moved me deeply. It wasn't an ultimatum or a demand. It was a door left open to a potential future. "It's perfect," I said softly. "But I need time," he finished for me. "Of course. Take all the time you need. The suite will be here whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready." His understanding only confirmed what I already knew. This man, for all his darkness, possessed a capacity for patience and compassion that few would credit him with. That evening, back in my cottage, I stood in my daughter's nursery, trying to imagine our future. The cottage represented independence, a certain separation from Vito's world of power and danger. The suite in the main house represented integration, acceptance of not just his protection, but his presence in our daily lives, in our family structure. Both options held their own appeal. Both had been offered with genuine care for my autonomy. As I ran my hand over the crib railing, my daughter kicked forcefully, as if offering her own opinion on the matter. I smiled, pressing my palm against the spot where her tiny foot had connected with my ribs. "What do you think, little one? Where should we make our home?" A series of kicks followed, making me laugh. That's not very helpful, you know. The next morning brought unexpected news. Vito was called away on business to Chicago. Something urgent involving one of his legitimate enterprises. He would be gone for 3 days at most. "Giovanni and Alexei will remain here," he assured me as we walked the gardens before his departure. "The estate security is at maximum. You'll be perfectly safe." "I'm not worried," I told him truthfully. In the month since Mark's capture, there had been no further threats. The Russians had been dealt with. How exactly I didn't ask, and Mark himself remained in secure isolation in Vermont, awaiting the birth of his daughter before his relocation abroad. Vito studied me, concern evident in his dark eyes. "You'll call if you need anything? Anything at all?" I smiled at his protectiveness. "I'll be fine. I have Elena, doctor. Abrams on call, and enough security personnel to start a small army. Go handle your business." He nodded, then hesitated. "Eliza, about yesterday, the suite is a beautiful gift," I assured him. "One I'm still thinking about." Relief crossed his features. He lifted my hand to his lips in what had become a familiar gesture of affection. "I'll be back as soon as I can." After he left, the estate felt strangely empty, despite the continued presence of staff and security. I'd grown accustomed to Vito's company, to our shared meals and conversations, to his steady presence as I navigated the later stages of pregnancy. That evening, unable to settle, I wandered through my cottage restlessly. Every corner held evidence of Vito's consideration. Books he'd selected based on my interests, a piano delivered after I'd mentioned missing the one I'd learned on as a child, artwork chosen to match my preferences. On impulse, I called Jenna. Our friendship had survived the dramatic changes in my life, strengthened by her unwavering support of my choices, however unconventional. "How's my favorite mom to be?" she greeted me. "Getting bigger by the minute," I replied, and making a decision I never thought I'd face. I explained about the suite, about Vito's implicit offer of a shared future, about my conflicted feelings. "Do you love him?" Jenna asked simply. "Yes," I admitted, more than I thought possible after Mark. "And does he love you? Not just the baby? Not just the idea of you, but the real you?" I considered the question carefully. "I believe he does. He's never said the words, but he shows it in 1,000 ways every day." "Then what's holding you back?" she challenged gently. "Fear that you're making another mistake? Fear that you're trading your independence for security?" "Maybe both," I acknowledged. "Plus, his world is complicated, Jen. There are aspects of his business that exist in gray areas, morally speaking. And yet the man himself, in his treatment of you, has been nothing but honorable," she pointed out. "Sometimes love means accepting the complexity, the contradictions. No one is all good or all bad, Eliza. You know that better than most." After we hung up, I stood at my window, looking across the moonlit grounds toward the main house. Jenna's words echoed in my mind, along with memories of the past 6 months. Vito's unwavering respect for my boundaries, his genuine care for my well-being and my daughter's, the gradual revelation of his character beyond the criminal facade. 3 days passed in quiet reflection. I spent time in both spaces, my cottage and the new suite, trying to feel which one resonated as home. I spoke with Elena, who offered her own perspective on Vito, a man she had served for over 20 years. "He was born into this life," she told me as we walked the gardens. "His father ruled through fear, through brutal enforcement. Vito chose a different path: respect, loyalty, protection of those under his care. The business may exist in shadows, but the man has honor." On the evening of the 3rd day, I made my decision. Vito returned late, his private jet touching down on the estate's landing strip just after midnight. Despite the hour, I was waiting for him in the library, where a fire had been lit against the spring chill. He paused in the doorway, surprise and pleasure mingling in his expression. "Eliza, I didn't expect you to be awake. I wanted to see you," I said simply. "How was Chicago?" "Productive." He crossed to where I sat, his eyes searching my face. "You look resolved." I smiled at his perception. "I am. I've made a decision about the suite, about us." He sat across from me, careful not to crowd me despite the eagerness I sensed beneath his composed exterior. "And? I want to accept your offer," I said. "But I need to know exactly what I'm accepting. Not just a living arrangement, but what you envision for us, for me, for my daughter, for our future together." Vito was silent for a long moment, organizing his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice was steady, deliberate. "What I envision is a partnership, Eliza. Not marriage, not yet, but a commitment nonetheless. I want to be a father to your daughter, to give her my name if you'll allow it. I want to wake beside you each morning and sleep beside you each night. I want to build something lasting between us, something based on mutual respect and affection." He paused, then added softly, "On love, if you're able to offer that." "And if I am?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Able to offer love?" He reached for my hands, holding them gently in his. "Then you would make me happier than I ever expected to be again." "I do love you," I said, the words both terrifying and liberating. Despite how we began, despite the complications, despite the parts of your world I may never fully understand or approve of, I love who you are with me, with my daughter. Something transformed in his expression. A lightening, as if a burden he'd carried for years had suddenly lifted. And I love you, Eliza Reynolds. More than I have words to express. He moved from his chair to kneel before me, one hand cradling my face, the other resting lightly on my rounded belly where his future daughter grew. When our lips met, it felt like coming home, to a place I'd never been but somehow always belonged. 3 weeks later, I moved into the suite in the main house, bringing only personal treasures from the cottage. Everything else we needed, everything my daughter would need, was already there, waiting for us. On a warm June evening, with the gardens in full bloom outside our windows, Sophia Elena Reynolds Castellano made her entrance into the world, 7 pounds, 6 ounces of perfection with her mother's auburn hair and her father's dark eyes. Vito was beside me throughout the birth, his strength anchoring me through the pain, his wonder matching my own as we heard her first cry, as we held her tiny form between us. "She's perfect," he whispered, tears in his eyes as he counted her fingers and toes. Absolutely perfect, as I watched him cradle our daughter, for she was truly ours now, in every way that mattered. I marveled at the strange path that had led us here. An accidental text message, sent in confusion and desperation, had altered the course of multiple lives. Mark received the news of his daughter's birth in Vermont. Per our agreement, he signed away his parental rights the following day. Within a week, he was relocated to a small town in Argentina with a new identity, modest resources, and the clear understanding that any attempt to contact us would end badly for him. It was a mercy he barely deserved, but one I'd insisted on for my daughter's sake. She should know her father chose to walk away, I'd told Vito during one of our many discussions about Mark, not that he was executed by her stepfather. The word stepfather had brought a rare, full smile to Vito's face. In September, when Sophia was 3 months old, Vito and I were married in a small ceremony on the estate grounds. Jenna stood beside me as my maid of honor, Giovanni as Vito's best man. Elena, who had become like family, held Sophia throughout the service. Our vows were simple, honest acknowledgments of the complicated path that had brought us together, and the commitment that would carry us forward. Not perfect people, not a perfect union, but a perfect understanding of each other's strengths and weaknesses, light and shadow. That night, as we stood on the terrace of what was now truly our home, Sophia sleeping peacefully in her nursery nearby, Vito wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Happy?" he asked, his breath warm against my ear. I leaned back against his solid strength, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. More than I ever thought possible. No regrets about the path that led you here? About the choices you've made? I turned in his arms, meeting his gaze directly. The path was unexpected, the choices difficult. But the destination? I smiled, pressing a kiss to his lips. The destination was worth every step. From the nursery, the baby monitor transmitted Sophia's small sounds as she stirred in her sleep. We moved together to check on her, standing side by side over her crib, watching the rise and fall of her tiny chest. My family. Not the one I'd planned, not the one I'd expected, but the one I'd chosen, and that had chosen me in return. Forged in crisis, tested by fire, strengthened by truth. And it had all begun with a single mistaken text message, the wrong number that had somehow led me exactly where I needed to be.